Welcome to the Idaho Fish and Game MK Nature Center. Today we're going to learn about Scat and Tracks, another animal sign. The Nature Center is a great place to learn about animal sign because we have a lot of animals that live here or pass through here for their habitat. Remember, habitat is food, water, shelter, and space. And the Nature Center was built for animal habitat. But the animals at the Nature Center are not in cages. They come and go as they wish. Sometimes there are all kinds of animals here at the same time. And other days, it seems like all you see is fish. But we know animals are active in this habitat, even when we don't see them, because we find all sorts of clues all over the Nature Center. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to learn about scat, track, and other animal sign, and then we'll go out and look for it. I've been using the term animal sign to talk about clues an animal might leave to show us that it was in this habitat. Here are some pictures of a different kind of animal sign. These are actually signs with animals on them. These are not the kinds of signs we're going to talk about today, but I thought they were kind of fun to look at. Two common types of animal sign are scat and tracks. Most of you know what I'm talking about when I say scat, but if you don't, then I need to tell you that scat is a more scientific word for poop. Today I won't be saying the word poop very much, but I will be saying scat. And now you know what I'm talking about. Tracks are, of course, another term for footprint. Both scat and tracks are fun to find, but there are many other kinds of animal clues to find. Could you think of another animal clue besides scat or a track? At the top here are pictures of a track and a scat. And then around the side, there are pictures of other clues. This might help you get started thinking of animal signs. Remember, animal signs don't have to be seen. Could an animal be heard or smelled? Those are signs too. Here are some examples of animal shelters. These are great signs. In this slide I see an anthill, a hummingbird nest, a beaver lodge, a squirrel nest, and a hole that an animal might crawl into. It's always great to see animals, but sometimes we only see parts of animals. Signs that are parts of animals might tell us the animal died, but other signs just tell us that they were here. Snakes, insects, and crayfish all shed their skin. These signs tell us the animal is growing. We shed our skin too, but our skin falls off in tiny pieces when we take a bath or shower. A lot of animal clues can be found on trees. Here we have rubbed bark, holes in bark, and chewed bark. I bet you know the animals that made these signs. When an animal lays down or walks, sometimes they leave a dent or a path. An animal would only have to lay down in an area one time for us to see the crushed grass. We call this an animal bed. When you're outside at the Nature Center today, look for trails that are off to the side of the sidewalk. These are animal trails. Sometimes they use the sidewalk, and sometimes they make their own path. When you find an animal sign, it's fun to try to identify what animal it came from, but there's a lot of other things you can tell from an animal sign. If you see tracks in a line, you can tell which direction the animal was traveling, or if it was running or walking. If you find scat, you can figure out what the animal was eating. What if there are blood drops next to some of the tracks you find? What would that tell you about the animal? How about this last picture? Who was walking on the beach? Here's a mystery tracking card. You see two different sets of tracks, a creek, and a bush. What do you think happened here? Talk it over with your neighbor. Here's another mystery tracking card. Notice in the upper left corner how the tracks are close together and then they become far apart. What do you think happened here? Here is the third mystery tracking card. Two sets of tracks that just disappear. What if I told you the tracks on the left were from a golden eagle and the tracks on the right were from a squirrel? What do you think happened? Tracks are pretty fun to look at, but there are way too many animals for me to teach you all of their tracks today. But let's look at three groups of tracks. On the left, we have a track that shows the whole foot of the animal. The animal that walks on their whole foot is called a plantigrade. People, bears, monkeys, skunks, raccoons, those are all animals that are plantigrade. They walk on their whole foot. Now look at the middle picture. This category is called digitigrade, and these are animals that walk on their toes, sometimes called digits. Dogs and cats are digitigrades. When I say dogs and cats, I do mean your pets, but also wild dogs and cats like wolves, fox, mountain lions, and bobcats. They all walk up on their toes. The last picture over on the right is of an ungulate like moose, elk, or deer. These tracks are from animals that walk on their toenails, and this category is called unguligrade. Their tracks look a lot alike, but they come in different sizes depending on the size of the animal. Check out those red arrows on the three pictures. Each arrow is pointing to the animal's heel. See how the plantigrades have their heel touching the ground? The digitigrades and the unguligrades walk with their heels way up off the ground. Let's take a closer look at the dog and cat tracks. At first glance, these two tracks look an awful lot alike, but let's look closer. Notice only the dog track has toenails out. Cats usually walk around with their toenails in. Check out the toes. The cat toes all point up. Two of the dog toes point out. Now look at the shape and the size of the middle pad. Completely different. The cat track also has more space between their toes. See if you can remember these features because I might be asking you about it later. Scat has categories too. If you learn a couple of different scat shapes, you can get close to guessing what animal left it behind. Do you see some scat on this slide that looks almost perfectly round like a marble? Whenever you see very round scat, it's almost always from an animal in the rabbit family. If you see pellets but they're not round, more like chocolate-covered raisins or whoppers, you're probably looking at ungulate scat. Remember, ungulates are deer, moose, and elk. Dogs and cats have long, skinny scat. You've probably seen this in the park. If the dog is a pet, the scat is kind of plain, but if the dog is wild, like a coyote or a wolf, the scat is likely to have hair and even bones in it, like the ones pictured here. Cat scat is hard to find outside because cats do something tricky with their scat. Does anyone know what they do? The size of the scat can also help you figure out which animal left it. See that picture with the brown oval scat, but there is one white scat? Well, that white thing is not a piece of scat. It's actually a piece of rice. So that tells you that that scat is super tiny. We know a dog can't scat that small. Do you know which animal scats smaller than a piece of rice? Lastly, there are two pictures of very large blobs of scat. Only a very large animal could have done this. Any ideas? Okay, now it's time for an animal sign quiz. There will be a slide with many pictures on it. All the pictures on the slide are from the same animal, but the next slide is the answer. Let's see how you do. Today we talked about scat, tracks, and other animal sign. We looked at examples of other types of signs such as animal homes, skin, and evidence on trees. We looked at footprint mystery cards to make up a story about what happened to those animals. We also learned about 3 categories of footprints and some scat shapes. I hope you enjoyed learning about animal sign. Now let's go outside and find some.